regular meeting of the Belleville Zoning Board of Adjustment for April 4th, 2019 will come to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Bennett. Here. Caruso.
Here.
Giordano.
Here.
Lopez.
Here.
Losoff. Here. Pedalino.
Here.
Sheldon.
Here.
Milano.
Yeah.
Del Garcia.
Here. Everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, has notice of this meeting been given in accordance with the Sunshine Law?
Certification of meeting has been advertised according to the Sunshine Law.
Okay. Minutes. I understand Mr. Shelton wants to put an amendment to the minutes.
Yes, the March 7th minutes don't reflect the vote that took place at the end of that meeting in which we're hiring Mr. Collin to serve as the planner for the board when we hear the Copper Church case later this month. I asked our board attorney that should be included, and he said he agreed that we should have that amendment made to the minutes.
I think we should mention it. I don't know whether it's so much as a hiring or just a
I don't think...
reconfirmation.
Right, it wasn't a vote, was it?
Yes, there was a vote.
A reconfirmation of his hiring, something
I'm
like
okay with it.
Okay. All right, so the minutes of March 7th to be approved with that amendment.
Okay, I'll make note of that.
Okay? Yes, clerk, call the roll.
Bennett. Caruso.
Yes.
Giordano.
Yes.
Lopez.
Yes.
Losoff. Yes. Pedalino.
Yes.
Sheldon.
Yes.
Milano.
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes. Also, I believe we have the minutes of our special meeting that we held.
And then I think...
You have that also, correct? Special meeting, the date of which was,
19.
yes, March 19th. Okay, any change to that? None? Motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Motion made by Mr. Milano to approve, seconded by Mr. Giordano. Clerk, call the roll.
Bennett. Yes. Caruso.
Yeah.
Giordano.
Yes.
Lopez.
Yes.
Pedalino. Sheldon.
Yes.
Milano.
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes. Communications, applications for adjournment. I have a one for dated March 29th for 3234 Heckle Street, LLC, Block 106, Lot 1. Ms. Ciccarelli, I am writing to respectfully request an adjournment with regard to the above captioned matter. We are requesting that application for 3234 Heckle LLC, presently scheduled to be heard at the April 4th, 2019 meeting of the Belleville Zoning Board of Adjustment, be adjourned until May 2nd, 2019 meeting. The adjournment is being requested due to the failure to provide adequate legal notice for the April 4th, 2019 meeting date. In consideration of this adjournment request, the applicant agrees to suspend any and all applicable time limits for municipal action for the duration of the adjournment. Thank you in advance for your time and assistance in connection with this request. With regards, Michael J. Palmieri, Esquire. Okay, so this is adjourned, and hopefully we'll get the notice straightened out by our next meeting on May 2nd. So this is being adjourned. Anybody in the audience who's interested, to May 2nd, 2019. There will be a new notice, at least in the mail, but I believe we already received the ones for within 200 feet. Am I correct, Ms. Secretary?
Yes.
All right, so if you got a notice within 200 feet of the property, you will not get a new notice. However, am I right? You don't have to get a new notice?
That's correct.
But the notice in the newspaper will have to be put before we can hear that case. All right, now, first, any other cases for adjournment?
Well, I think the church case is scheduled for a special hearing date for the 17th.
Yes. We all agreed, I believe, through the conversation on the phone, that we all agreed that April 17th on a Wednesday will be a available date to everybody. I don't think anybody said that they had a problem with it. For a special meeting for number 3 on the agenda, 125 Academy Street, St. Mary's, St. Mercurius Church. So we'll be hearing that at a special meeting on Wednesday, April 17th, in this room at 7 o'clock. For anybody in the audience who's and notices have already been published to that effect in the newspapers. Mr. Gassion, when you sent out the notices within 200 feet, can you tell me when you said the case was going to be? Because we found out that on the 30th.
I did not send out the notice, my associate did, my guest, he sent it out for the 17th.
All right, so he didn't send it out for us earlier,
No.
like for tonight?
That's correct, to the best of my knowledge.
All right, okay.
As you know, I
As long as he
separate,
did both, because I know it
separate
was...
the work in my office and I don't take care of the notices.
You should go into it more thoroughly.
Well, based on the comments you made prior to the meeting, I'll take a
You've
look
been doing
at
it
it.
for 45 years. So you gotta get better at it.
You know.
25
Okay,
years.
so, do you have any other case that you wish to adjourn?
I do not.
You do not. Are you aware that number 2 on the agenda, which I believe is your case, the taxes still haven't been paid as of 4 o'clock this afternoon?
They were paid according to my client.
That's what my office told me they paid.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Pardon?
That's what my office told me. Yes.
Can I have your case if you don't have the receipt? Can I have 1 second to go to my
Yes, you
client?
can have one, you can have 2 seconds. I had to check 3 times. There, okay. Wait, 3 times. I have to check myself.
Mr. Chairman, my client was advised to make sure they were paid. He told his office to pay it. Obviously, if you checked it,
I had our secretary check it once yesterday and twice today.
I'm sure you're accurate then. I assume you're going to adjourn the case.
I would adjourn it to next month. Be the first case on the agenda if we get this case done tonight. Unless your church carries over, which it probably will, and it's then up to you how you want to proceed.
So then, pursuant to the fact that the taxes were not paid,
As far as the information we have.
based on, well, I have to go by your information. Gina says she checked, so I respect her statement, so therefore, I have no choice but to seek an adjournment.
Okay. All right. And of course, you'll waive the time restraint.
I will.
Okay. So anyone in the audience, ZB 2019-01, 16 Quinton Street, George Gonzaga. Okay, that case will be adjourned to next month, May 2nd, 2019. There'll be no further notices either in the newspaper or in the mail.
Thank you. Can I just make sure my witnesses understand and they leave?
Yes, no problem.
Which case are you going to? What's going on? I just got All right, so you guys can hang around, we're not going to get hurt. No, they like to watch you perform.
Jeez, everybody's being dismissed.
Not everybody, but everybody involved in that case, and there's 2 interested citizens back there. Mr. Williams is not on that case, he's on this case.
Can I ask you a question? No, you know what, we'll do it at the end. Go ahead, let's hear the next case. The case that's on the agenda, ZB 2018-13, 90 Franklin Street. Carmen Fortunale, the applicant is seeking approval to legalize the use of the subject property as a mixed-use building with 2 commercial tenant spaces on the first floor and 1 residential studio apartment on the first floor. And I think there's no mention of the second floor.
On my application?
Well, I'm going by this.
Oh, yeah.
The application,
The application.
the mail,
And then on the
notice said
agenda,
2. They have 2 upstairs.
They said
Two
upstairs?
two upstairs.
This is.
Oh, this is just a, okay, no problem. Go ahead, Mr. Gassion.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, George, take a seat, come on. Council's name is Robert Gassion, the firm is Gassion Pomaco, 524 Union Avenue, Belleville. I represent the applicant in this matter, Carmen Fortunale, whose family has owned the building for more than 100 years. He's seeking preliminary and final site plan approval and use and bulk variance relief. He's seeking to legalize the use for 2 commercial tenants and 1 residential first floor tenant and 2 residential uses on the second floor. The residential use on the first floor is a studio apartment, and the residential use on the second floor, the second floor uses are 1-bedroom apartments. Mr. Fortunale sought to sell the apartment or building, and at that time found from the construction department records that the building was not a legal 2 commercial plus 3 residential. In fact, it was reflected as 2 commercial and 1 residential. The property is adjacent to the railroad tracks in a BF zone, commercial shopping center zone. All the bulk variances are pre-existing, and we're not seeking to increase the size of the structure. The issues are really use and parking. The witnesses you'll hear from are Carmen Fortunale, Frank Miletto, the architect, and George Williams, the planner. Mr. Fortunale will review the history of the property and explain how he found out that the records of the town hall did not reflect it as it was being used. Mr. Miletto will describe the existing structure and the parking. George Williams will give a project overview and discuss the relief sought. He will also review both the positive and negative criteria and discuss his reasoning for advocating for the approval of this application. If the board is ready, I will call my first witness. Mr. Fortunale.
Sir, could you raise your right hand, please? With regard to this application, do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
I do.
Can you spell your name, state your name and spell your last name, please?
Carmen Fortunale, Fornarotto.
Thank you.
Mr. Fortunale, are you the owner of 90 Franklin Street in Belleville?
Yes,
And for how long have you owned that property?
3 years approximately.
And for how long has the property been in the Fortunale family?
Good 90 years and more.
And how is it currently used?
Right now, it's 1 illegal apartment.
Excuse me, one more?
No. Right now, it's one
apartment-
legal
One legal
apartment.
apartment, right.
Which apartment is that?
The one upstairs.
Okay.
And,
One legal apartment upstairs.
Yes,
and 2 commercial apartments.
correct.
How was it used prior to you seeking a certificate of occupancy in order to sell the building?
At one time, it was 2 families upstairs, 2 stores, and another family in the back of one of the stores.
And the upstairs units are 1-bedroom units,
Right now, yes, 1-bedroom units.
and the downstairs unit is an efficiency,
Right,
and that is in the back of the laundromat,
the back of the store.
Store.
Right,
luncheonette?
right, correct.
My mistake.
Now it's a barber shop.
Okay, what are the 2 stores downstairs?
Downstairs is a bakery and a barber shop.
one time it was a luncheonette.
Absolutely.
And can you explain when the changes occurred?
It all started when the upstairs is 9 rooms, 3 on one side, 6 on the other side. My mom and dad raised 10 children upstairs, and as each child got married, mom and dad set the 3 rooms on one side as an apartment for the married couples. And when there was no more married couples, and after mom, and that's how it was years ago. After mom and dad passed away, my brother rented an apartment upstairs, which made it legal. And
Rented what apartment? Both of them?
He had one apartment, and the other apartment, 3 rooms on the other side, that was used for the married couples, he turned into an apartment.
Can you tell us what year that was?
I have no idea, it was quite a while ago. Well, it was after mom and dad passed away.
After
Did
they
you?
died?
Yes,
When did they die?
well, dad passed quite a while, I don't remember.
You don't remember when your father passed away?
No, many years ago.
I'll try to clarify a little bit. Did you at one time tell me that you thought that occurred somewhere around 35 or 40 years ago?
Or could be, yes.
And what about the apartment or efficiency to the rear of the commercial use?
Well, my brother that used to be a luncheonette with 3 rooms in the back, which was a kitchen to cook food, and 2 storerooms. So then later on, my brother, when the luncheonette was empty, my brother turned it into a barber shop, and he put another apartment in the back, which was illegal. So when I inherited the property and I found out it was illegal, I just...
But you just inherited it 3 years ago.
Yes, 3 years ago. So the apartments that are upstairs, one is legal, one is empty, and the one downstairs is illegal, so I have no other tenants upstairs.
Now, the apartment that's legal upstairs, what's the size of that apartment?
It's 6 rooms.
That's a 6-room
Right,
upstairs.
and on the other side, where the other apartment is 3 rooms.
That's the illegal.
No, it used to be legal at one time, and then when my brother had a tenant up there, she was dirty, very dirty and filthy, and he got rid of her, and being he was single, he wanted no more tenants. So it's been empty for years.
You're talking about with this 3-room.
Yes, upstairs. So it's been empty for years because he didn't want no more tenants.
Can I have Mr. Di Lorenzo sworn in, please? Because he's got a copy of what I have, and I'd like to get this into the record so we eliminate this conversation or confusion. Huh? Yeah, you can swear Tom in too if you want.
Our zoning officer and our board engineer planner, if you can raise your right hand with regard to this application, do you swear that the testimony you may give shall be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, first question before we go to Mr. Di Lorenzo. Who is Albert?
Albert's my twin brother, passed away 3 years ago.
And he's the one who owned the property before you, correct?
Well, my mom passed away, me and my brother inherited. And when I got married, I gave my part to my brother because after that, if I passed away, then there would be conflict between my wife and my brother.
Now, when you say when you got married, how many years ago are you talking about?
When I got married, it's in 1975.
Okay, so in 1975, you gave it to your brother.
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Di Lorenzo, I have a copy of the same report you have from our tax assessor's office. Would you please enlighten us?
Well, I have it as 2 stores plus 1 apartment from 40 to 54, and 2 stores and 2 apartments from 55 to 1970. Then from 71, there was 1 store and 2 apartments to 78. As the reval was 2 stores and 1 apartment in 06.
Okay. What were you going to say?
It's always been, I hate to disagree with Frank. It's always been 2 stores, always. As long as
I know,
my dad...
that's just the tax record.
This is the tax record. This is when you were being taxed, or your brother was being taxed on.
Well, it had to be taxed on 2 stores.
I don't know, this is the tax record.
It Yes.
Yes, that's a
Well, maybe he
confirmation.
was using two stores at the same time for one business.
It's always been, no, it's always been a bakery for 40 years that I know.
Okay.
And it was always either a luncheonette.
No, I haven't. Oh, wait, this, what's this? Let me see what we got.
They always had to be inspected by town officials.
I understand that. Thank you very much, Mr. Gideon. All right, you may continue, Mr. Gassion.
I'm sorry,
I
sir?
just wanted to get that into the record, now you may continue. I don't know if you got a copy of that.
I do.
Okay.
Is the property adjacent to railroad tracks?
Absolutely.
And that's been that way for all the time when you grew up?
Absolutely, yes.
Actually, I have a question about that. Wasn't Watchung Avenue emptying there at
No,
one time?
Watchung-
Or Belmont Avenue, what is it?
Luncheon Avenue was always a street.
Yes.
That property was owned by the railroad. So
The
when-
street was owned by them?
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me finish.
Go ahead.
And when the trolley came by, the railroad closed that street up and no more municipal walk to pedestrians.
I agree with you. I just wanted to clear that up because it was said it was always the railroad next to it when there was an
Oh,
exit
yeah.
street there. That's why I asked the question. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Gassion.
Mr. Fortunato, going back, is it correct that you told me that it was converted, upstairs was converted into two apartments in the 1950s?
Father, as far as I know, yes. Yes.
And did it stay as two apartments, except when your brother did not rent it out from the 50s till now?
It was always two apartments, but one was empty. He didn't want no more tenants. Because the tenant he had was dirty, or filthy, he was single. Well, that's the truth.
But you said it was an illegal apartment.
No, that was illegal upstairs.
The one that was dirty and filthy?
Yeah, upstairs.
The six room?
No,
No,
three
three.
rooms.
The three.
Lived in the six.
He lived in the six, so
Yes.
which was illegal upstairs? If he lived in the six was illegal?
No. The six was all one legal apartment.
Yeah, I understand. But
He's
you,
saying, Jeremy,
his previous testimony was one of the apartments upstairs was illegal
Yeah.
and the studio was illegal downstairs.
That's not what
that's not what he
Thank you,
said.
thank you. The apartment downstairs was illegal.
Okay.
Two apartments upstairs at one time were legal.
In his recollection. Doesn't mean it's true.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he remembers it.
All right.
And then when he didn't want no more tenants, he left it empty all these years. And then when
Go ahead, go ahead.
Sorry.
When your brother left it empty,
Yes,
did he leave it, did he leave the kitchen there, the bedroom
Yeah, it's
there,
all
everything was
yes.
left there?
yeah, everything's just empty.
Was there some thought on his part or your part that at some point in time, when you got a clean tenant, you could...
No, he never wanted another tenant.
But it was left alone?
Yes,
For how long, roughly?
quite a while, for 9 years.
All right.
Now, did you try to put tenants in there?
No. As soon as I heard, when I inherited the house, I put it up for sale, and the real estate lady told me the apartment downstairs is illegal, so everything is just, I left the apartments upstairs all empty, so the only tenant downstairs that's paying that's paying rent is the girl downstairs, and she's been there for quite a few years, and she's on disability, and I didn't want to throw her out, because she pays very low rent, and I didn't need the money, so she's still there.
So then, it is your position and your understanding that the two upstairs apartments were at one time legal.
Absolutely.
You didn't disband or abandon them, you just left them unoccupied after the brother sold the property to you.
Absolutely.
And it's your position that, to the best of your recollection, no approval was ever obtained for the apartment on the first floor.
I found that out when I tried to sell the house.
You did not know that, but found out when you went to check with them.
Absolutely.
And is it correct that you assumed, when you took over the property, there were 3 residential apartments and 2 commercial apartments?
Absolutely, yes.
But he didn't sell it to me, he inherited it. Am I right?
I don't,
Yes.
He didn't sell it.
I ain't heard it, yes.
from his
My
brother.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Again, it's been in the family forever. Are you the last surviving brother?
Out of 10, there's only one left in California. That's it.
I have no further questions to this witness.
Any questions by members of the board? No. Okay, you may call your next witness.
Thank you.
Oh, any
Mr.
members of the
Mileto.
Public have a question of this applicant, of this witness?
Yes.
No, okay. Cool.
No, you're okay.
You're okay.
Okay,
You got a very expensive holder right now.
never did that before.
Could
but
you,
again,
could you raise your right hand, please, with regard to this application? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
Help me God.
So you could just state your name, spell your last name, please.
My name is Frank, middle initial D, Mileto, 14 Beaverbrook Drive, Long Valley, New Jersey,
Can you spell your last name, Frank? Just for the-
Mileto.
Mr. Mileto, are you a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey?
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mileto's appeared here as an
Yeah,
architect,
numerous times, as long as his license is good, he can still testify.
it's still good.
and he is testifying as an architect and only an architect. I am not qualifying him as a planner.
Okay.
Mr. Mileto, would you describe the site?
It's an existing mixed-use building on Franklin Street, adjoining the railroad or the Conrail Railroad area. It is an existing single structure with another structure to the rear. And in the front structure is a combination of two residentials on the upper level, as described earlier, 2 stores in the first grade, and a single-room studio to the rear, to the north end of the building. It's a substantial, old building. My inspection of it revealed that there has been no new additions. When I say that, not within the last 20, 25 years. Everything that you see there is existing, and my plans reflect what is existing today. I can't dare get into the history of who was when and what, because the applicant, I think, gave his best information. But what I can tell you is what we found and what we are proposing to do to improve it.
Excuse me, we have these, don't we?
Yes.
Okay, I see some red markings. Were they
These, I put them on,
for this?
just for clarification,
Okay,
so
why don't we mark this then, since it's different
Sure.
than what we...
Mark, you want it as A1?
Yeah,
A2.
A2.
A2?
These are
The proofs are always A1.
Yeah, revised site plan, well, not revised, but marked up.
Mr. Mileto, before you get into that, would you just tell us the square footage of the site?
the site is,
Right, if I told you it's about 7,800 square feet, would that be about correct?
7885.8.
Thank you. Now, continue with your testimony that you were about to
Okay,
give.
well, I'm going to try to stay away from zoning.
That we,
The building exists, as I said, there's no recent addition, certainly, there's no proposed additions. The only additional work that we're proposing on the site, which was suggested by the reports we received from the staff, and that was to provide lighting for the parking area which exists at the rear, and also a protected, I'll call it, refuge area, which is indicated here on this lighting plan. There's details of the fenced-in area. It's a 6 by 10 foot area with galvanized steel posts 5-foot-high vinyl slatted fencing and graded to the existing parking lot area.
Now, you're talking about the refuse area, is that
Refuge
correct?
area, correct. The other change, I'll call it, to the existing condition is addition of lighting to light the area around the building, light the exits, and light the parking area. There'll be, we are proposing a single light pole indicated here, which is a shielded box fixture, which will only light the parking lot, will not spill into the neighboring properties. The same thing with the existing, or the new wall packs, I'll call them, which are attached to the house or the building in certain locations to allow for access, visibility, egress, and so on. The rest of the site, besides the building, is the existing lawn area here. There's a triangular area to the east on the property, which borders the paved walkway area, which was a street at one time, it was reflected, but has now been abandoned and is a walkway along the easterly side of the property.
Would you describe the ingress and egress to the parking area?
The ingress and egress is from a driveway to the west side of the building, along from Franklin Street to the rear. There are 4 parking spots along the northerly property line. There's a 5th parking spot here on the east side of the parking rear lot area. The 5 parking spaces are existing, and we're not proposing any additional parking. There was thought to it to take the lawn area here and pave it and create additional parking, but it was client and our feeling that this green area is more valuable and more required to give a better quality of life, if you will, to the area and to the tenants of the building versus another paved parking area.
Would you briefly describe the exterior of the structure?
It's a wood frame building. We have photographs of it here on the next sheet of the same set that was submitted. It's vinyl sided. First level has masonry brick in the front of the stores. There's 2 stores, the barber shop to the right on the east side and the bakery on the left side. All of what I visited and saw
That's the outside.
is old. It's not been touched, it's been maintained, but it has not been improved in any way. The doors were old, the trim was old, the plaster walls in it were old. It was existing for many years.
So you're saying the building has not been changed?
No, not at all. Not
No additions have been made to the building for many years?
many years.
And this application does not include any request for any addition of square footage?
Exactly, correct.
I have no further questions to this witness.
Questions by members of the board?
Thank you.
Questions by members of the public of the witness? None, Mr. Gassion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Blatter. Mr. Williams?
Yes, sir.
Raise your right hand when you're ready, Mr. Williams. With regard to this application, do you swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
I most certainly do.
State your name, spell your last name, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is George Weedle Williams, Williams with an S, W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S.
Mr. Williams, you're a licensed planner in the state of New Jersey.
I am.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Williams has appeared here on a number of
Yes,
occasions.
numerous times, as long as he's got his license, he can still talk to
I'm still current.
him.
Mr. Williams, will you tell the board what you completed in preparation for your testimony?
Yes, I reviewed the site plan and site plan application that are before you this evening. The master plan and zoning ordinance, I've been to the site on numerous occasions, and all of that in the context of the municipal land use law. I also reviewed some of the case law and literature in support of the release we'll be seeking this evening.
Did you also review Mr. DiLorenzo's letter and Mr. Harris's letter?
I did.
And did you give us a project overview of the proposed not the proposed, the existing building.
Certainly, and you've heard testimony from the owner and the project architect already. It is pretty straightforward in terms of a project overview. We have a structure and use that has existed on the site for, as you've heard, at least 100 years, or close to 100 years, excuse me. And for a large portion of that time, it has existed as a mixed-use structure. You heard the architect testify to the approximate size of the property. I would just add to that testimony that it is a truly irregularly shaped lot, and you'll see that in some of the exhibits I'll show you, and you have it in your site plans. The application before you this evening, as introduced by council, is a request for a D2 variance, and that is, as you know, a request for the change, intensification, or expansion of a non-conforming use. This use, as proposed and as exists, is deemed a non-conforming use because in the BE district, mixed use is not permitted. Although it's been there in this capacity for a number of years, it's not a permitted use. So we're looking to, what I would say, administratively correct the errors of the past by getting a variance relief to permit what has existed for a number of years.
And would you review the relief that is being sought specifically?
Specifically, in addition to the D2 request, there are a request for a number of pre-existing bulk and area deviations. Arguably, those reliefs should not be necessary because we're not exacerbating any of those bulk and area deviations from your code, but for the record, they are, and Mr. Herrick's memo captures these, they are as follows. Parking. 11 spaces are required for the proposed and existing mixed use on this site. 5 spaces exist and are proposed. The lot width, this is it is what it is sort of situation. The lot width required is 200 feet, but because this is a truly irregularly shaped lot, it is 48.8 square feet, and that's what we intend to keep it as. Lot depth, again, is what it is. 200 foot is required. What exists and what is proposed is 114 feet 10 inches. Front yard setback, 35 foot setback is required. Obviously, we have a 0 foot setback. The stores abut the property line. Rear yard setback, 35 foot required, 11 foot 5 inches, and 3.3 foot 2 inches required. What exists is, that's what exists. 35 is required, 11 foot 5 inches, and 3 foot 2 inches is what exists. Maximum lot coverage, 30% is the standard, and we come in at 44%. Again, all of these conditions are existing conditions. I would go so far as to say even the mixed use configuration is a pre-existing condition.
Would you explain the planning observations that you have made with regard to this application?
Yes, in the context of the D2 relief, and even if we were to apply for relief for those pre-existing deviations from your bulk and area standards, I applied the D2 standards, and in my opinion, there are sufficient proofs both in the affirmative and the negative criteria to support the D2 relief and the bulk and area if required. In terms of the impact on the surrounding area, given the long-standing history of this site and its configuration, in my opinion, there would be certainly no negative impact on the surrounding area or neighborhood, but rather, given the testimony of Mr. Mileto, some minor positive impacts in terms of lighting, et cetera, the trash refuse location on the lot. But for all intents and purposes, if you were to approve this application, to the passerby, they would not notice anything because it will continue to exist as it has existed for a number of years. In terms of the context for deliberation, as this board knows, I should go into the exhibits first. Should I hand these out just real
Yes.
quickly?
A3?
You want to choose this? Drawing enough for Jerry.
This is Fades.
You have the copies with us?
I do, thank you.
So you got one?
Yeah, I got it.
George is always get left out, that is. The exhibit that's just been handed out is a very straightforward, simple exhibit. It's only intended to give a bit more context for the remainder of my testimony. It is a series of photographs that were taken by myself and my staff, and an aerial view with some overlays to give some context to this site in the context of the surrounding area. So the first is on slide 2 is an aerial photograph. We thought it was important to include this aerial photograph with the labels just to re-emphasize our proximity to mass transportation. And I will come back to this in a moment as I talk about the master plan's vision for this area. But when you look at this aerial photograph, the blue and green lines indicate the local bus routes directly in front of our property on Franklin, and that would be Route 27 and Route 90. But what's more important in the context of your master plan, perhaps in the context of the mixed-use development that's being proposed and exists, and in the context of the parking relief, we are cheek to jowl, if you will, with the light rail line, and that's the slash yellow lines that you see directly to the east of our property. Photo number 1 on slide number 3 is just a frontal view of the property. You heard testimony that there are 2 commercial tenant spaces on the ground level, and you can see them clearly in this photograph. The proposal, if you were to approve our application, those 2 commercial spaces would remain, and if you look above with the window awnings, those are the spaces for the residential uses. And I'll get to one on the ground level in a moment, but if you were to approve this application, no changes to the building, but those would continue.
Can I ask you a question? Based on photo number 1 and photo number 2 and photo number 3, it looks like there's a 3rd floor here.
That's the attic.
Yeah.
Attic.
That's an attic?
Yes.
It looks like it's the size of a regular apartment. It's got 3 windows, regular size windows, it looks
You can
like.
stand, excuse me, you can stand up in there.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, but it's only an attic.
It's not finished?
No, it's just an attic.
So you just have blinds there?
That's it, yes.
Mr. Fortunato answered that far better than I would, so there you have it. But to the chairman's point, the rest of the pictures are just perspectives of the site and the surrounding area. Photo number 2 is a streetscape of Franklin looking northwest towards the supermarket, and you can see from this picture as well, the surrounding land development pattern is very akin to what we are. Mixed-use buildings, commercial on the ground level, often residential above, similar heights and architectural styles. It also captures in the foreground the light rail tracks, again, not to belabor that point, but so close to our property. Slide number 3 is a elevation of the property with the yard space in the foreground. Again, a substantial amount of green space in this property. I've been to the site several times, it's a beautiful garden, and when you look to the bottom right-hand side of this picture, that is the 3rd apartment that was discussed earlier by both the applicant and our project architect. Finally, there are a couple of aerial photographs just to show the size and shape of this land. The photo number 4 is a great capture of the yard space. You can see it's a pretty substantial yard in the context of this neighborhood, where most of the properties have little to no outdoor space. Finally, slide photo number 5, just another aerial photograph capturing the light rail, but also the land development pattern in the immediate vicinity. If you look to the middle left-hand side, there's one multifamily building captured in the photograph. There's another one further to the left. So it's a hodgepodge of land uses in this area. I'll talk to you momentarily about what the master plan contemplates, but certainly this particular property does not stand out from any of the other properties in the immediate vicinity. So I mentioned before, I got a little confused as to where I was in my testimony, that there are sufficient proofs, in my opinion, to justify the D2 variance. I should go a step further and say that the master plan specifically contemplates mixed use and higher density development in this area, particularly because of our proximity to the light rail. And so I will share some quotes from the master plan when we get to the negative criteria, but it struck me as important to share with you as an introductory comment because it really does support the application. As this board knows, the burden is on the applicant to demonstrate the positive and the negative criteria. I mentioned before, in my opinion, there are sufficient proofs for both, but there's also a fair amount of court case law, rather, that talks about how boards should look at D2 variance reliefs. Most of the court cases suggest that boards can look at applications like this one for a D2 variance with what they call greater liberality. And the general theory is that a D2 variance for the expansion, change, or intensification of a pre-existing non-conforming use is less impactful than a wholly new non-conforming use because, as in this case, you've got over 100 years or so of coexisting in a zone that does not permit the use. And so if there were problems, the theory goes, the community would know that this non-conforming use was creating a negative impact on the community. If there are no problems, then the negative criteria are much easier than if it were a wholly new non-conforming use. The court case that I often refer to is the Burbridge v. Mine Hill court case, and it is instructive for a few reasons. First, it suggests that special reasons can be found if there are any visual conformity or enhancements that come along with the approval of the D2 variance. It also suggests that the board can apply certain reasonable conditions if you're inclined to approve the D2 variance, but feel that those conditions might help harmonize the use in its surrounding environments. Typically, those conditions involve landscaping, lighting. In this case, I think Mr. Mileto may be one step ahead of that. He talked about the improvements to this site being the trash enclosure, the lighting. I believe there's one other one, but at least those two. So going directly to the proofs, in my professional opinion, if you were to grant this relief in the context of the Burbridge case, several purposes of zoning would be advanced. First, subsection A of 40:55D-2, which is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. That happens to be the first clause in the purposes of zoning and is a bit of a catch-all, but I think it was appropriate for this application given what your master plan recommends for this particular district, moving it to mixed-use dense development. Similarly, section G, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses and open space, both public and private, according to their respective environmental requirements in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. Again, I looked at this particular purpose of zoning in the context of your master plan's vision for this area and find that if you were to approve this application, you would advance that purpose by permitting a use that is actually very suitable for this area. Finally, subsection I, and we talked about this briefly, or I talked about it briefly a moment ago, to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. I will admit that that's a bit of a stretch because we're not proposing any changes to the building itself. There's no real major civic design, no offense to our project architect, but there are some site improvements, and I've mentioned those already. So in my opinion, you could include subsection I in your consideration. Now for the more important part, in my opinion, and that's a substantial detriment to the public good. In my professional opinion, there's no detriment to the public good because the property has existed in this condition for decades. If you were to approve this application, again, to the passerby, they would not know that anything had changed whatsoever. Same number of tenants that have existed there previously, the 2 residential tenants on the 2nd floor, the 1 residential tenant at the efficiency on the ground level, and the 2 commercial tenants on the ground level as well. The telling part of the negative criteria is the second prong, as I intimated earlier, and that is no substantial impairment to your zone plan. And the zone plan is your land use element and your zoning ordinance. The master plan, and I just took a look at the new master plan, the one prior to the one just adopted, suggests a couple of things that support the use as it exists and is proposed. The area with, I quote, the area within 1,500 feet of the light rail stop should be studied for its potential as a transit village. It continues, the area along Franklin Street to the east of the intersection of Belmont Avenue and Franklin should be changed from the commercial shopping center, BE zone, to neighborhood retail, BA zone, to reflect the existing uses along the corridor, this corridor. The BA zone permits single-family and two-family dwellings, neighborhood retail uses, business service uses, business and professional offices, financial institutions, mixed uses, underscored, schools, and horticultural nurseries. These permitted uses reflect the existing development along this portion of Franklin Street, and that's on page 32 of the master plan. But it goes on to suggest the following. One of the main principles of transit-oriented development is providing mixed-use development in the immediate area surrounding stations. This promotes less reliance on automobile and more reliance on mass transit provided in the area, which is why I shared the exhibit with the identification of mass transportation proximate to this site. Mixed-use development also inevitably increases density in the immediate vicinity of the train station in hopes of keeping transit ridership numbers high and local businesses thriving. I thought that was poignant given that we have a mixed-use development directly next to the light rail. The main premise for putting mixed-use development in a transit village is to allow residents to access transit stations and local businesses without relying on automobiles. Again, I thought that was poignant not only in terms of the mixed-use development, but to the extent we need a parking variance, it underscores the master plan's vision about reducing the reliance on automobile trips in this area. So for the D2, in my professional opinion, there are sufficient proofs under the special reasons we advance purposes of zoning, and in the negative criteria, no impairment, no detriment to the public good, and no impairment to the zone plan at all.
And would you review the C variance or variances?
Certainly, I would suggest to the board that the C2 or flexible C variance context is appropriate for the parking. In my opinion, the flexible C2 allows this board to consider the parking deviation 11 required, 5 existing, 5 proposed, in the context of whether it makes more sense than a strict application of your code. And I encourage the board to think about that in the context of what your master plan suggests. The C2 requires a couple of things. First, it relates to a specific piece of property. In this case, it relates to 90 Franklin, which is unique in its proximity to the rail line, but also unique in the context of the surrounding land development pattern, which is almost entirely mixed use. That the purpose of the municipal land use law would be advanced by a deviation from the zoning ordinance requirement. General welfare and visual environment purposes would be advanced the same as were done with the D2 variance. That the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. In my professional opinion, if you granted the parking relief, there would be no substantial detriment to the public good. I would argue there would be no detriment at all to the public good because it's existed this way for years. That is, the site has had mixed-use development for decades. has only provided 5 parking spaces on the site and has survived with no problems. So clearly there would be no detriment in my opinion. That the benefits of the deviation would substantially outweigh any detriment. Again, the benefit would be that you allow an existing mixed-use development to continue in the context of the surrounding area, but also it would advance the purposes of your master plan. So in my professional opinion, the benefits would outweigh any possible detriments. And then finally, that it would not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan. Again, it can't, because your zone plan actually suggests that the reduction in automobile reliance is important in this area, and that the trend should be going towards transit village or transit-oriented development. So,
Obviously, I have no further questions of this witness.
Any questions by members of the board?
The light rail, access to that from this property, where's that? Is it flush? I don't know.
oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
It's a good question. So if you look at aerial photo 2, and you turn it upside down, so the red border is on your right-hand side. You come out the front, you walk directly across the street, and there's a call it a little pavilion that takes you to the passenger boarding section. So it's across the street. It's diagonally across the street.
If you look in photo number 2, on the left, that's the railing of where the light rail is, the station. Photo number 2, page 4. See the railing on the left? That little railing?
Two?
Yep.
Photo 2, page 4.
It's hard to see. It's in front of the top.
It's on the left.
Yeah.
See that railing on the left? That's the light rail station.
Yep.
I couldn't remember, I really couldn't.
The bar's on this side. You don't see the bar.
Mm-hmm.
The old bar, it's called.
That used to be a street.
Right. I remember
That
that.
used to be Watchung that came in, that paved it, now it's just a dead end.
It's huge.
Yeah.
We did it on the other side, too.
So,
I mean, inspectors, they're going to do it.
oh, yeah.
They used to come out too. The bar,
Well, it may have gone just get a striking peak. That's why there was a good shape.
Actually, in photo 7, you see a curve.
Mr. Chairman, any questions for Mr. Williams?
Not really. Mr. Williams, you made a number of points, but you realize, I think, what, two of the apartments are not being used right now?
That's because Mr. Fornerato did not use them pursuant to Mr. DiLorenzo's statement
Okay.
that they should not be used. He's obviously an honest elderly gentleman
I agree.
who's very careful about complying with the law.
Were they used up until 3 years ago? Or
They,
was 2
they were used by his brother, one, but as I'm only going to paraphrase what he said.
I agree.
He did not like
The tenant on
a
the second
tenant,
floor.
something about the tenant, and therefore didn't replace that
He
tenant.
didn't like dealing with tenants, so he decided
If I
to.
can ask,
Go ahead.
Mr. Cascio, so are you looking at dates at all in your presentation? In other words,
Well, Mr. Fornerato couldn't provide complete date information.
because, I mean, I find it very credible, okay?
He's being as honest as anybody
So
else.
my point is, what I'm seeing, and I'm speaking out loud here, I find it credible, and so to me, he absolutely remembers 2 uses upstairs, 2 apartments. I believe that, I really do. I don't necessarily I don't know, agree with me if the first one was there as that low. Right, that's what I believe.
You don't agree what, I'm sorry.
The first floor apartment was there as long as, you know, I mean.
It was not there as long, he never meant,
No, I
he
know.
never said,
So that's
first
what,
floor apartment was there as long as the two on the second
so
floor.
that's what I'm trying to go to.
You know when that was built?
I can
Let me
get,
just reiterate what he said. When the first child got married,
I know
that
what
child moved into that apartment. We're talking 50 years ago.
Well, I'm just saying though, like, the two upstairs, there's clearly delineated how it came about, okay? I don't feel as comfortable about that delineation of the first floor. So,
What he specifically said, the first floor was illegally put in
right,
by his brother. He
Right.
conceded that.
right, and
How
I'm,
long ago?
so I'm not arguing
He
that.
can't say exactly when it was done, but what he said, and I'm gonna reiterate, I'm not testifying, I'm only reiterating what he said.
Arranged.
Whatever the business was, that business left, and the part of the business in the back was those rooms were no longer needed.
Right.
And his brother converted that
Right.
to a efficiency apartment and left the business in the front. Now, I'll ask him if he can estimate how long ago.
Not yet, slow down.
Not yet, okay. I'm only reiterating what he said,
This
just
is
so we
my
make
turn
it
to
clear.
talk. You're taking off my mind. So my point is, and that's why I asked you about the dates, okay? Because in my mind, the upstairs clearly achieves the dates that we always are important, you know, to us. The 55, 79, well, I get that, okay? I don't feel the same way about the first floor, A. And B, I think all around, if that was left to manipulate that business in a bigger or larger as needed, well, I think it's smarter planning. That's just the way I see it. You know,
I understand your thinking.
but, you know, now you can ask anything you
I
want.
just want to ask him one question.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Do you happen to remember, or have any way of recollecting when the efficiency apartment was built on the first floor?
Taking a guess, a good 20 years.
Okay, I believe him.
Yes, a good 20 years.
I believe him.
That's all. Thank you.
Keep them up. Oh, when he's done, I got questions.
It's longer than 20 years.
Well, I'm gonna go with him, not you, okay?
I can tell you it's longer than 20
But
years, though.
the
That's only
structure,
the late
the
90s.
structure might have been there, but it wasn't used as an apartment, is what he's attesting.
Right.
When did they create that?
It was.
Yeah, what happened was apparently whatever business was there took up all the space.
And so, that's my point.
Well, the new business, whatever new business put in, didn't need the same amount of
And I
space.
agree.
And he created an
So to
efficiency
me,
apartment.
that makes sense to
And it's
his
probably,
story.
based on what Mr. Giordano's saying and what Mr. Fornerato's saying, more than, it was in the 90s sometime,
So,
I
and
would guess.
And I'm saying, that's why, where I'm heading to it. I can see, and I believe his recollection about the two apartments upstairs. That makes sense to me. Whether it was legal or not, it predates the ordinance and all that. You know that. So that's my only concern. The first floor, I have my reservation. I mean, I'm not, you know, everybody can do what they want, but I give you my opinion.
Okay, now, my questions. According to the plans, and I'm only going according to the plan, the way I'm reading the plans. The store on the left has two ways to get in and out, correct?
Yeah, back door and front.
Right. The store on the right, it's only the front door, am I correct?
Store on the right is the front door, right.
And the apartment in the back, there's only one way to get in and out of that apartment
Right,
in the
correct.
back. Now, on the second floor, the apartment on the left, if I'm correct,
Right.
has two ways to get in and out, am I correct? One in the
Yes.
back and one in the front?
Correct.
And the one on the right, there's only the one way. When you
Yes,
come up the
there's
stairs.
in between both.
Right, there's no second way to get out.
No.
Okay.
But the roof is very low. From the window, say if it got a bit apart, you go from the window right to the roof.
Now, I have a third question.
Absolutely.
How do you get into the attic?
Attic is it's a floor,
A pull-down ladder.
Pull down ladder in the hallway or in each apartment?
No, it's in the front of the house.
In the hallway.
No, one of the bedrooms.
Which one? The apartment on the left or the apartment on the right?
Apartment on the right,
The apartment on the right.
right, which was the main apartment of the house.
The one on the right was the main apartment
Sure,
of
that's
the
where
house?
my brother lived.
That was the sixth room.
Right, that's the
Yes,
sixth room.
right,
That, he's calling that the main room.
right.
That's the sixth
You wouldn't
room.
want to go
And it's
to,
not a stairway up there.
I
It's a
don't
hatch.
see 6 rooms on the right, I see,
That's
well,
not stairs.
sure,
let's
there's
see.
6 rooms.
He's talking about the sixth room though, that's what he's
Yeah,
talking
it's not about the six rooms.
about. The six rooms are where the full deck is.
Yeah.
Which one of the rooms go behind the apartment on the left.
One of them will be...
You follow me? You got 3 rooms, 1, 2, 3 on the left. And behind that is another room from the other apartment.
Okay,
See,
so
we
the
went
the
around
sixth
this
room apartment
way.
is kind of like an L is what he's saying.
It's an L. What he's
Right.
explaining is the
It's an L.
bigger apartment is an L.
Right.
So the 3 rooms are in one spot and
Right.
the other part of the,
Well, I don't see yellow, I see walls.
Well, that- You gotta have a wall to have a bedroom.
There's an L, there's something wrong with these plans.
Mr. Mileto can try to explain it if that's all
Okay,
right.
Mr. Milano, I'd be very happy for you to explain.
Sure they know.
Thank you.
Let's get these A2, page A2, I think. Yeah, am I correct?
Plan, floor plans,
Right,
second floor.
go ahead,
The existing unit on the right
go ahead,
has front sitting area,
right,
they both have a front sitting area.
bedroom.
existing living room, bath.
Let's go straight back, don't skip.
This,
Yeah, start with the front. You started with the sitting room, and then all of a sudden you went over to the living room, dining, this bedroom, it's a combination there. There's an existing bedroom, right, that's 2.
yes,
Now go to this gigantic room where the door actually comes in from the hallway.
that's existing,
That should be like a living room,
it is, the living room,
dining room.
right.
There is an extra bedroom. I don't even understand how you can have a living room and a bedroom in the same room.
No, it's not.
That's the way you got it listed, there's no wall here.
One bedroom
It's an
apartment.
existing bedroom.
Explaining into one bedroom apartment.
All right, so that's a giant living room is what you're telling me?
Can we let the owner explain?
I think maybe I gotta call my client back up.
Can I explain it to you?
Go ahead.
That's the front room.
Go ahead.
We gotta start from the back.
All right, let's start from the
That's how,
back.
all right. You come in from the back,
No, you don't come in from the back, you come in from the middle.
no, there's an entrance.
I know how to read a blueprint.
Excuse me, sir.
Go ahead.
There's an entrance from the back of the house, which goes upstairs to the apartment on the right.
Yes, but that goes to the apartment on the left,
No,
the front of the building.
No, the apartment on the left comes up from the middle of the house. The apartment on the right comes from up in the middle of the house.
Am I reading blueprints wrong then?
Yes.
Well, maybe the
Because
blueprint's
that's not
wrong.
the way the blueprints are showing. The blueprints show when you go up the stairs in the back, it goes, now we're talking about facing the building from the front of the building, it goes to the left apartment, not to the right apartment. That's what's showing here,
Looking at the building, looking at the building.
from the
From
outside.
the back or the front?
From the
Front.
front looking in.
Okay, from the
You're
front,
facing
oh,
the
go ahead,
front of the
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
From the front looking in,
Okay.
that's,
Yeah.
Wait, let's
And
get
so
this
when you
straight.
come in from the back,
Go ahead,
the
where you
first-
park the cars, go
yeah,
ahead.
the first room is the kitchen on the left.
On the left, yeah,
The
okay.
next room is the
Well, actually, it says an existing hallway, and then you go into the kitchen.
Let him try to explain.
All right, I'm just saying what's on here.
All right. You got the kitchen first, right?
Go ahead.
Then after the kitchen, you have the living room.
Yes,
Then after the living room was my mother's bedroom.
okay,
Then after my mother's bedroom, there was another room in the front.
called the sitting room,
Well,
Or
it
listed as
used
the
to be-
sitting room.
It used to be a bedroom at one time.
okay.
Then to the right of that, which is in the front of the house, is another bedroom.
That's attached to the left side?
Yes. You
Okay,
can't
they
get
don't
it from
have it
the other,
attached here.
you
They
can't
don't.
get it from the,
Okay, they
there's
have
no
it
wall.
separated.
There's no wall, it's just open.
Okay.
You
You're
follow?
you're talking about the whole front of the building
Right.
belongs to one room?
The left
Right.
side.
Right,
One
two
side.
So
bedrooms.
this
One
here,
side.
there's
Where's
the
your
L.
room?
That's the front.
Yeah, you think it's easy, huh?
And there's another- another wall in
Does
there.
it make another left from that room to go into another bedroom?
Yeah, you should try to get a sandwich with.
No, this,
That's a good question.
He's got it now.
that's the three. This is
So,
the L.
and your point is what?
All right, so technically, two means of coming in and out of the apartment are the apartment on the left. The apartment on the right, there is no two ways to come in.
No, just the front.
Right.
You come up the stairs in the front.
And you make a right and you go right in the door.
Right.
Right.
And then there's a roof which is very low, there's a window, so if God forbid a fire, you could just get out very easy.
Jump on the roof?
Yeah, roof and then the side.
Oh, okay. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
You know, these
And
things
it's
are
an
wrong.
F,
Single that L.
and nonsense.
I know they look okay.
Nonsense.
Good jobs. All right. Any other questions by members of the board?
I have one or two comments to make.
Go ahead, Ms.
A few times during the testimony tonight, it's been said that the building is over 100 years old, but I just want the record to indicate that according to the state's property tax records, this building was constructed in 1930, and it's listed at this moment as 2 stores, 1 apartment. That's
According
the,
to which records, I'm sorry?
this is the state's property tax records. It was constructed in, according to their records, I just updated it. This is as current as the end of February of this year.
I don't know, oh, you're talking about
This is a state
the
tax
county,
database.
county records?
I get this through the Monmouth County Tax Assessor, but they get all the data from the state. But they're saying that the building was constructed in 1930 and is classified as 2 stores, 1 apartment. I think a few times tonight it was said that at some point in the history of this building, it was listed as two stores, 1 apartment.
Yeah, that's.
Now, according to the state,
No
it is-
question.
Let
it's
us
still
finish.
listed. According to the state, at this moment, it's listed as 2 stores, 1 apartment.
Well, again, I don't know about a state record, I don't know what relevance a state record has. I was a tax commissioner for 26 years. We never referred to the state tax records.
Well, Mr. Gassion, I have to butt in here.
Go ahead.
Because I have a copy of the tax assessor's records.
That's
And
different.
it says built in 1930.
I'm not disagreeing, I just said,
No, I just wanted to clarify.
I just said I don't know of any relevance of state tax records. So my client was mistaken, it's less than 100 years
I
old.
have no problem with that, I just wanted to
90
clarify.
years, 90 years.
No, it don't.
90, whatever.
Just for the technicality, it's 89 years old.
But the point was, and I think when I started going, is that, yeah, it's 90 or so, right? But, and it was testified, it was not like it was a secret, that his family all lived up on the first floor. It was one big apartment. Then as they grew older, it became 2 apartments in the 50s, I'm gonna say.
Well, before 1981, according to this, it looked like it was owned by a Rose Funerale.
That's my mother.
That's your mother, okay.
So my point was, his recollection is pretty clear to me and very credible to me that there was 2 apartments upstairs. My only problem is, I'll say it again, without interrupting, is the first floor apartment. That's hard, I have a hard time finding my way clear with that particular apartment. The other 2, I see. And, you know, I'm not saying I want it to be, I'm just saying, if we're going by the dates and the laws, the 55 law, the 79 law, these all predate those laws. That's all I'm saying.
In my mind, this case seems to be certification of a
That's what it feels like.
non-conforming use.
We're not, this is a
And it's
use
not.
variance.
This is not a certification case. I did not have
Right.
enough proof to go on a certification case.
Unless he would, unless you,
Now, I did find
if you
here,
could, you would.
I did find here the record of when we did the reassessment in 1977. It said the first floor says quilting by Lori, or Lenore, and the other store was the bakery. Now, on the right it says, old 3-room apartment behind store on first floor, now part of the quilting by Lenore store used for storage. So in 1977, there was no apartment back there, it was being used as storage.
No, internet.
That's it right here, on the documentation.
Again, I'm not going for certification. I
No.
could not find appropriate proof to seek a certification.
Oh, I
So
got it.
I'm not saying there was a continuous use of that efficiency apartment.
Okay. All right, any other, go ahead. No. Any other questions by members of the
Yeah, one more
board?
comment to make.
Yes, go ahead.
Our chair had expressed some concern about the possibility of a third floor, and it was explained it's just an attic. But to that end, and to support the statement that it's just an attic, if you look at the photo that Mr. Williams prepared, photo number 4 in particular,
Yes.
if you look at this is an aerial view, if you look at the slope or the pitch of the roof, you'll see that it's so severe that I don't think anyone could possibly live in that attic. By the time you get even 4 or 5 feet away from the front wall, it looks like the
Yes, it
the
dives.
height is no more than 3 or 4 feet. So that can't possibly be used for any human habitation.
I think the only thing you could use up there is possibly 2 rooms, one on each side. That's it.
There's
Maybe
only
like
a
bed-
pull-up ladder. There's no access based on my client's testimony.
I
to
understand
floor.
that, but also he said you could stand up there.
Just in the front parking lot.
Yes, exactly. But what I'm saying is you can have either 1 or 2 small areas in the front where you can stay as an extra bedroom. But anyway, let's forget about that. Any other questions by members of the board? Mr. Caruso?
When did your brother Joe buy the building? What year?
My brother
Joe never owned the building.
Joe never owned the building. He used to, my brother Joe used to have a luncheonette there. And that's why 3 rooms behind where the embroidery shop was too at one time. That's where the 3 rooms for the kitchen and the storage rooms were. Joe had a luncheonette there years ago.
And the other questions by members of the board? Any questions by members of the public of any of the witnesses? Any members of the public, do you have any other witnesses, Mr.
I
Gassion?
do not.
Any other members of the public wish to give testimony on this application? None? Can't see with Mr. Gassion standing up.
No, I'm not.
None? Okay. All right, no, very good. All right, do you wish to sum up, Mr. Gassion?
I do, but I want to talk to my client. I don't need the board to take a break. I just need 1 minute to talk to my client
Okay.
before I sum up. George.
And that could be storage.
It's original. I'm trying to figure that out.
Something that was like honeymoon.
You get the feeling.
I bet you last time I was renovated. Somebody might say, now what could he use that back for? Storage again?
Yes, you want, but I'm ready, Mr. Chairman.
Ah, very good, Mr. Gassion. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the building is in the family for approximately 90 years. It's adjacent to a light rail. The majority of the surrounding uses are mixed uses. The building clearly predates the zoning ordinance. We're providing site lighting. We're improving the parking lot configuration. We're putting a slatted fence around the proposed disposal area. The building existed this way for many, many years, and therefore there was no harm to the intent and purpose of the zone plan if this application is approved just the way it is. Certainly, there's no substantial detriment. We're D2. We're not introducing a new discordant use, as my planner clearly reviewed. We're not exacerbating anything here. The density that's been approved on Washington Avenue is 50 units per acre. And Franklin Street obviously is the main thoroughfare of that old section of town and should be treated in somewhat similar manner if we're looking for increased density. You got improvement, as I said, with the trash and the lighting. My planner testified that the local bus route is in front, and obviously, we're close to the light rail. The surrounding use pattern is similar to what my client is doing. My client, unlike most of the other properties, has substantial green area and nice yard space, and somewhere I heard a garden. I've looked at it, I can't say I saw it, but there's a garden. The master plan contemplates mixed use and higher density because of the proximity to the light rail. Again, repeating, with the case law, we're not introducing a discordant use under the D2 criteria. In Burbridge, as George pointed out, conditioning an application by landscaping or lighting or the trash enclosure is a basis for the approval. He talked about the purposes of zoning, A, G, and I, and permitting a suitable use. The building footprint is remaining the same. We are not expanding anything. The transit development, the whole concept is to have multifamily density close to railroads. If you look at Bloomfield, as you're going up Bloomfield Avenue, as you first enter from Newark into Bloomfield, you will see the density that's going in there and the development they have with the nice shopping and many units behind because they're trying to be close to the railroads. The parking variance, the C2, certainly the proximity to the mass transit allows for the change in the parking and just permitting the 5. Excuse me. And in fact, has better parking and more parking available than most of the buildings on Franklin Street. What we're looking for is the board to allow continuation of a use that's been in existence for the better part of the 90 years. Not during the entire time. I'm not making that representation, or I would have gone for a certification. But on and off, this is the way it's been used. And again, we're keeping the exact same structure for the 90 years, or approximate 90 years. There's never been an increase in the size of the building. And I thank the board for their time and attention to this application.
All right, gentlemen and ladies.
Make a motion to approve.
We're going to have a discussion first. You can make any motion you want. Discussion amongst the board members. Any discussion?
Well, I don't think there's any secret where I'm at. I mean,
I don't know, you got me confused.
no, it's easy to do. But, like I said, the testimony was credible about the 2 upstairs apartments. I don't think the downstairs apartment predates the ordinances. By his own testimony, it does not. And again, we're not looking to harm the building and its potential resale and all that, but I don't think, putting 2 upstairs and 1 downstairs is an untenable compromise, if you will. That's my 2 cents. I think I'm saying ad nauseam.
So what would you suggest?
My suggestion, and I can't tell Mr. Gassion what my thinking, as I said from day one, I'm more comfortable, and I believe there's ample evidence of the 2 apartments upstairs. I don't think there's ample evidence for the 1 downstairs.
Well, to go along with that, I'm also going to say all the evidence through the years, there has been a mention at different times of 2 stores and 2 apartments. There has never, ever, from all the records I have, seen any evidence that was ever 2 stores and 3 apartments. 2 and 2 is the highest I've ever seen. So I would go along with you on that. Now, it's up to the rest of the board how they
It's up to the
feel.
applicant too, it might not.
Well, it depends on what the board wants. No, you're not. But you can talk. Even though you're not voting, you're allowed to put your 2 cents in.
And I want to remind the board that this application would require 5 affirmative votes to pass, to be approved, 5 yes votes,
So,
out of 7 potential voters.
so,
I
You want to
also
say
share the concern about this efficiency apartment on the 1st floor. As Mr. Milano said, there's more than ample proof about the history of the 2 apartments on the 2nd floor.
yes.
Listen, you gotta give him credit, he was honest.
Yes, and he said he didn't use it for years.
He was honest.
But that didn't mean he abandoned it, he just didn't want to rent it, that's all.
Right, and I commend him for his honesty.
Yes.
And at the same time, we also have to make sure that we don't make special.
Help.
Right, exactly.
I think that area goes with the store, as it did for many years with the bakery. There was a bakery there, and I'm sure they used that property in the back for their storage, that unit in the back.
Well, bakery, they said was on the left, it was a salon, something that was being used as storage, and it's in our records.
It was used for the store.
Yeah. So you're in agreement too, then?
Well, also for the sake of consistency and fairness, last year we heard a case involving an apartment building on Geralman,
Yes.
which had a very similar situation. There was a small little...
The locksmith.
Right, and we didn't allow it. So we would be kind of hypocritical having a double standard
Yeah.
to say no to the Geralman case, but yes to this.
That's a point.
I'm just looking for uniformity in our decisions.
So,
No, I just, in my opinion,
I put my,
Mr. Gassion can do what he wishes.
well, Mr. Gassion, I don't know if he wants, I think it's a compromise.
He can go ahead and
At
take
least
the
he's getting
vote.
an extra apartment in the deal.
He can go ahead and take the vote.
Let me talk to my client for a minute.
Go ahead. You want to
Otherwise,
recess? We can
I'll
take a
debate
recess
the
too.
difference between the Geralman Street apartment and this one.
I'm on a weak state tonight, I'm just recovering from the
It
flu.
was done the same way, though,
Oh,
based on the evidence.
Take a recess. Just take a 5-minute break.
Mr. Gassion, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. We'll redo at 22.
okay.
Mr. Gassion, you have the floor.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to my client.
Very good.
My client continues to be under the impression that it was a legal 2-family residence at all times. He, therefore, wanted to go for the variance for the 3rd unit. I have, together with the planner, explained to him what the board's opinion is, and although he's very upset, if you look at him, he's red-faced at the present time, he understands that he is unlikely to get, based on the deliberations, unlikely to get the approval, and therefore will accept the 2 apartments above, the 2 second-floor apartments, and understand the rejection of the efficiency. He's very reluctant to do that, but he understands.
Okay. All right, then. we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Valano,
2 and 2.
2 and 2, seconded by Mr. Caruso. Conditions, I think we should have conditions, no use of the attic for living. For living,
No limits missing.
okay.
No reports.
Because- Yes, take care of all the reports of
And
Mr. Harris.
and Frankie's normal permit thing, you know.
Yeah. Frankie, can you think of anything else that's needed? No. No? Okay. So, we have a motion and a second, and with all the usual things,
Who seconded the motion?
okay?
Who seconded?
Seconded by Mr. Caruso.
Oh, I didn't hear.
Well,
You were talking.
I talk a lot, I know.
Yeah, I know.
Clerk, call the roll.
Bennett,
Yes.
Caruso,
Yes.
Giordano,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Valano,
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes. Approved, 7-0.
Thank you for your time and attention.
You're welcome. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I have to do your, let me,
Oh, yeah, let's do the resolutions first. We're gonna do 2 resolutions. No, we're going to private session. As soon as we go in private session, we'll explain. Good night, Mr. Gassion. Remember, Mr. Gassion, with the notices, please?
Yes, sir. That's hard for me to
And
forget.
please don't send it to Montclair anymore.
I don't know that it was sent to Monica.
I'm
Could have
just
been
going by
the
what's
paper
here.
making a mistake, but I'll find out.
Okay, very good.
that's true.
You can't do everything. Good night.
Are you ready to do the resolution?
Here's what we got.
Yes.
Matter of Michael Silvestri, 5759 Magnolia Street, application CB.
Sorry, Mr. Mine, I know you're upset, but-
12. Bennett,
Yes.
Giordano,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Caruso,
Russo.
Yes.
Sheldon.
I take the part, I recuse myself from that case.
Yeah, he wasn't on.
Oh, you did, excuse me.
Magnolia case, I have to-
That was-
Lozoff,
Yes.
Valano,
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes.
Okay, matter of R Square Realty LLP, 534, 538 Union Avenue, application ZB 2019-04. Bennett,
Yes.
Caruso,
Yes.
Giordano,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Valano,
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes. Mr. Mafucci, we'll be going into private session.
You're going in front?
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
We're done. Why did you do all that?
Bye.
We're done with the,
Can you shut the door then?
Motion to approve.
Yes, motion made by Mr. Milano to go into private, seconded by Mr. Giordano. Clerk, call the roll.
Bennett. Yes. Caruso.
Yes.
Giordano.
Yes.
Lopez.
Yes.
Lozoff.
Yes.
Catalino.
Yes.
Sheldon.
Yes.
Valano.
Yes.
Del Garcia.
Yes. The purpose, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn to the 17th.